The night was thick with the kind of humidity that made bad decisions feel inevitable. Neon lights flickered against the cracked pavement of an alleyway in Los Angeles, where the entrance to Ruin, the city's most infamous club, pulsed like a radioactive wound in the urban sprawl. Hunter Biden wasn't supposed to be here. He knew that. Everyone knew that. Ruin wasn't a place where politicians' sons or high-profile figures showed up for a casual night out. It was a place where deals were made in shadows, where the scent of sweat, adrenaline, and secrecy clung to the air. A place where those who entered either left richer, in handcuffs, or in the back of an unmarked car, never to be seen again. But that was exactly why Hunter Biden had chosen it. Dressed in a dark, unbuttoned shirt and designer jeans that had seen better days, he approached the entrance with the kind of confidence only someone untouchable could have. He didn't wait in line. He didn't check for security cameras. He simply walked up to the bouncer, a mountain of muscle with a dead-eyed stare, and flashed a grin. "I don't think this is your kind of place, Mr. Biden," the bouncer said, arms crossed. Hunter smirked. "You saying I'm too good for this place?" The bouncer exhaled slowly through his nose. "No. I'm saying even you should think twice before walking through that door." Hunter leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Oh, I love bad decisions." Without another word, the bouncer stepped aside. The door creaked open, and Hunter stepped into the abyss. Inside, Ruin was a fever dream of flashing lights, grinding bodies, and illicit exchanges. The walls were lined with gold-accented booths, occupied by figures too dangerous to be named. The music was a deep, bone-rattling bass, muffling the murmurs of whispered threats and clandestine deals. Hunter took it all in like a man returning home. At the bar, he ordered something expensive and neat, downing it in one smooth motion before turning his attention to the crowd. A woman draped in silk and diamonds leaned close to a man whose face was known to law enforcement but never on record. A backroom door opened briefly, revealing a glimpse of men counting stacks of cash under flickering fluorescents. The VIP lounge, elevated above the dance floor, was cloaked in thick, artificial smoke. This was a place where reputations came to die. Perfect. As he took another sip, a figure sidled up beside him. Thin, pale fingers with too many rings drummed against the counter. "Didn't expect to see you here," the man murmured. His accent was slippery, East Coast money mixed with something foreign. "Does Daddy know where you are?" Hunter didn't bother looking. He smirked at his glass, swirling the liquid inside. "Do you know where you are?" A low chuckle. "That's the real question, isn't it?" The man motioned toward the back. The door Hunter had seen earlier. The one that only certain people went through. "Come on," the man said, already walking. "I think you'll like what's inside." Hunter hesitated for a fraction of a second before setting down his glass and following. The night was only just beginning. The hallway leading to the back room smelled of aged wood, expensive cologne, and something faintly metallic, something that made the hairs on the back of Hunter's neck prickle. The man guiding him moved with an air of practiced ease, like someone who had led too many people through these doors before. Hunter Biden wasn't stupid. He knew what this place was. He knew what happened behind closed doors in clubs like Ruin. That's why he was here. As the door creaked open, dim, golden light spilled from the room's low-hanging chandeliers, illuminating a space that was somehow both lavish and suffocating. Velvet couches lined the walls, littered with people whose names were whispered in political backchannels and law enforcement briefings. A dealer of rare artifacts from the Middle East sat in one corner, his fingers adorned with gold rings that caught the light as he flicked a cigar. A South American businessman, cartel, definitely cartel, leaned back with a drink in hand, watching the room with unreadable eyes. And in the center, a glass table. Hunter let out a slow exhale, rolling his shoulders as he approached. The air in here was thicker than the main floor, thick with expectation, with power. The man who had led him in leaned close. "You in or out?" Hunter locked eyes with him and grinned. "Do I look like someone who says no?" A laugh rippled through the room. The people here had seen men like Hunter before, men born into legacy, men who thought they were untouchable. Some of them had destroyed men like that. Some of them had built them into something far worse. Hunter sat down. A silver tray was slid across the table toward him, and on it, a perfect, glistening line of fine white powder. He barely hesitated. With the precision of a man who had done this before, he leaned forward, inhaled sharply, and let the fire rush through his system. It hit fast, a jolt of electricity straight to his skull, his vision sharpening as his pulse thundered. A woman with dark, piercing eyes watched him from across the table, her lips curving into something like amusement. "Fast learner," she murmured. Hunter leaned back, exhaling sharply as a warmth spread through his body, his mind expanding outward in every direction. The room felt different now, electric, alive, like every color had been cranked up to its maximum setting. His hands felt light, his body weightless, his heart racing. Someone said something, but the words stretched and warped. The world tilted, not in a nauseating way, but in a way that made everything seem possible. He laughed. Someone else laughed with him. And then, the room exploded into movement, conversations overlapping, hands clapping him on the back, glasses refilled, deals whispered into ears. Hunter felt invincible. His mind was firing at 1,000 miles per second, and he was untouchable. A man said something about politics, and Hunter interrupted with a booming voice that sounded so much more powerful than usual. "Politics is a goddamn joke." More laughter. Someone handed him another drink. He didn't ask what was in it. He didn't care. Time blurred. The music from the main floor throbbed in his skull like an extension of his own heartbeat. At some point, he stood up too fast, the walls pressing in, and staggered out of the room, ignoring the calls behind him. Back in the main club, everything shifted. The neon lights were too bright. The bodies moving on the dance floor looked off, distorted. Someone brushed against him, and he shoved them aside harder than necessary. They muttered something under their breath, and suddenly he was angry. Why were they looking at him like that? Hunter smoothed a hand over his face, breathing hard. His pulse was booming. The world outside the backroom hit Hunter like a tidal wave. The heavy bass rattled his bones, neon lights burned his vision, and every movement around him seemed too sharp, too fast, too wrong. Something had shifted inside him. His blood roared, his limbs tingled with electricity, and his mind raced with thoughts that came faster than he could process. He was sweating but didn't feel hot. He was moving but didn't feel in control. He was on top of the world. As he stepped into the chaos of the main floor, people moved past him like shadows, unimportant, irrelevant. He looked around, sneering at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Low-level clubgoers. Nobodies. Hunter Biden didn't belong here. He was above this, and they needed to know it. He spotted a group near the bar, young, rich, the kind of people who thought they were powerful but had no idea what real influence looked like. One guy in a tailored suit was laughing too loud, the kind of forced laugh that irritated Hunter for reasons he couldn't explain. Hunter staggered toward them, his grin stretching too wide. He clapped the man on the back, harder than necessary. "What's so funny?" The man, caught off guard, turned to face him. Nothing, man. Just talking." Hunter cut him off with a short, sharp laugh of his own. "Nothing. Nothing. Oh man, that's cute. You nobodies stand around in your overpriced jackets talking about nothing, acting like you run the world." The group exchanged uneasy glances. "Hey, we're just hanging out, man," one of them mumbled. Hunter's face twisted with mock sympathy. "Oh, just hanging out? Just existing?" His voice dropped, venom laced in every word. "Do you even know who I am?" Silence. A girl at the table whispered something to her friend. Hunter slammed his hand on the bar, causing glasses to rattle. "Do you know who I am?" he roared. Now, heads were turning. The bartender froze mid-pour. The dancers slowed, side-eyes thrown his way. But Hunter wasn't done. He turned, pointing at random people, his voice sharp and slurred at the same time. "You think you're important?" He jabbed a finger at a guy in an expensive leather jacket. "You're nothing." He spun, eyes locking on a girl in high heels. "You're probably sleeping with one of these losers, huh? Trying to social climb? Pathetic." The group was visibly uncomfortable now, shifting in their seats, avoiding eye contact. Someone muttered, "This dude's out of his mind." That set Hunter off. "Oh, I'm out of my mind." He stepped forward, chest puffed, the air around him crackling with aggression. "You don't know shit about me. You don't know what I've seen. Who I know. You're all small time. Fleas. You wouldn't last a day in my world." Then he did something really stupid. He shoved the man in the tailored suit. The guy stumbled back, nearly knocking over a barstool. "What the hell, man?" Hunter just laughed. His nose twitched, his body jittering with uncontrollable energy. "Come on. Hit me. Do something. I dare you." The guy hesitated, clenching his fists. For a second, it looked like he might swing. Then, someone else stepped in. A broad-shouldered man in a dark shirt, security. His voice was calm, but firm. "That's enough." Hunter sneered at him, his jaw tight. "Oh, and who the hell are you?" Security took a step closer. "Sir, I need you to step outside." Hunter snorted. "Need me to? Oh man, you have no idea who you're talking to. Do you know my last name? You want to end your career over this." The man didn't flinch. Hunter's face twitched with something between anger and amusement. His pulse was pounding, his vision narrowing. His hands curled into fists, his shoulders tensed. Then, a second security guard approached, speaking into his radio. Hunter realized something. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was a countdown. And he was seconds away from getting dragged out of here. His mind scrambled for a way out, his thoughts buzzing in a frenzied loop. And then, like a bad miracle, the flashing blue and red lights outside the club caught his eye. The cops had arrived. For a split second, his mind caught up with his body, his heart slamming against his ribs, his palms slick with sweat, his nose twitching, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He should have felt panic. Instead, he felt invincible. He turned back to the security guard, a wild grin splitting his face. "Oh man, you're in trouble now." The guard didn't react. He just nodded toward the entrance, silently telling Hunter that the decision wasn't his anymore. The cops were coming in. The front doors of Ruin swung open, and 2 LAPD officers stepped inside, scanning the scene with the exhaustion of men who had seen it all before. One of them, a tall, no-nonsense type, locked eyes with the security guard, who gave a simple nod. That was all they needed. The officers strode toward Hunter, their hands resting near their belts, not quite going for their cuffs, but not far from it either. "Sir," the taller officer said, voice steady, "we need you to step outside." Hunter snorted, shaking his head. "Oh, this is rich." He wiped his nose and spread his arms wide. "You boys got nothing better to do tonight?" The officer didn't take the bait. "Step outside." Hunter took a slow step forward, his pupils blown wide, his lips curling into a smirk. "You have any idea who I am?" Silence. "I'm Hunter Biden." He let the words hang in the air, like he had just played the ultimate trump card. "Do you know what that means?" The shorter officer exhaled sharply. "Sir, we don't." Hunter cut him off, jabbing a finger at his chest. "No, no, no, I don't think you get it. You think you're about to slap cuffs on me? You think you're gonna make a goddamn spectacle out of me? Let me tell you something." He leaned in, voice lowering to a venomous whisper. "You touch me, and you're done. I have friends in places that'll have you handing out parking tickets in Bakersfield by next week." His nose twitched again. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else entirely. The taller officer sighed, exchanging a look with his partner. It was the look of 2 men who had been here before. Hunter could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him now. The club had gone silent. The bartender stood frozen, glass in hand. The people at the bar, the VIPs in their booths, everyone was watching. And that only fueled him more. Hunter laughed, shaking his head. "Jesus Christ, this is hilarious." He clapped his hands together. "You really don't get it." His voice dropped to a slow, deliberate taunt. "You can't touch me." The taller officer squared his shoulders. "Sir, last warning. Step outside or—" Hunter suddenly leaned in, pressing close, his voice dropping to a quiet, icy murmur. "Or what?" And then, slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded bill, and slipped it into the cop's palm. The entire club seemed to hold its breath. The officer glanced down. Then he closed his fist around the money. A beat of silence. Then, without another word, the officer turned to his partner and gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. A decision had been made. "Let's go," the taller cop muttered. And just like that, they walked out. Hunter stood there for a moment, breathing heavy, staring at the backs of the officers as they disappeared through the club doors. Then he turned back to the room. All eyes were still on him. He wiped his nose, straightened his shirt, and smirked. "Enjoy your night, gentlemen." And with that, he strode toward the exit, his head held high, his body thrumming with energy, his pulse still hammering from whatever was coursing through his system. As he reached the door, he turned one last time, scanning the crowd, the people he had mocked, shoved, threatened. His gaze was filled with nothing but contempt. And then he was gone.